7:30 on this Wednesday morning. You're welcome along to OTB AM. Owen and Shane with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. And we're going to be bringing you the very latest as European football turns into one giant sporting equivalent of Fyre Festival between now and then. We're going to be getting the Spanish angle, the Irish angle, the women's football angle and the Manchester United angle this morning. Shane Hannon, are you ready for this?
Good morning, Owen. I don't know if I'm ready for this because it keeps changing every 5 minutes. So I feel like I'm going to look at my phone in 5 minutes and something else mental is going to have happened. I went for a run yesterday evening and leaving for the run, everything was as normal. It was a shit show, but it was normal. And then I came back and, Chelsea fans were protesting. Petr Cech was intervening. Woodward was gone. Clubs were bowing out left, right and centre. So who knows what's going to happen this morning. It
was actually remarkable listening to the news round last night when Joe, Richie and Adrian were chatting through it, and in real time this massive story was just crumbling all around them. That full football show, by the way, as well, as we're checking out on podcast this morning, because it was brilliant stuff from a whole range of different voices. As you say, it has moved on quite a bit since then. Again, Shane, one of those things is the situation at Manchester United, where this is just another one of these stories where in any other week it will be the biggest sports story of the month. The fact that Ed Woodward has actually resigned from his role, or is set to resign from his role. It may not be as big as, say, 6 English clubs all pulling out together for this new European Super League, but it's a bloody big deal.
Yeah, and like Manchester United fans will be massively celebrating this news that Ed Woodward is departing the club. Like, the statement was suggesting that they've brought this announcement just early forward because he was going to leave at the end of the year anyway. But this is a PR win for United. This is what they're trying to do to bring the fans back on side. And look, Ed Woodward is in a job, £3 million a year, a specialist in failure, as the banner said during the Burnley game. Someone who is deeply unpopular with fans and kind of has that intangible link with the Glazers and always will. So for that statement to have no mention even of the Super League, for Ed Woodward not to have shown his face in front of a camera while he expected Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Harry Maguire and others to stand in front of a camera the other day, at a time when they knew very little of what was going on, and probably knew as much as we did, and certainly as the Sky Sports reporters did. This is a long time coming for United. And look, Graham Souness said it quite well last night, I thought, as well. He spoke about the fact that this was a 177-page contract between these guys. And they've said that it's only been in the pipeline really a month, but a 177-page contract, as Souness pointed out, is not formed in a month. These guys are like rats from a sinking ship, Owen. I mean, Zefferin's comments from UEFA probably summarised it best, talking about the conversations he had with some of these guys, with Woodward and with others, with Andrea Agnelli as well. How can you trust a word that comes out of any of their mouths now? That's probably why Ed Woodward has decided to depart at this particular juncture, because you can't trust a word that comes out of his mouth. And look, this 177-page contract, it's like in one conversation you have a girlfriend telling you she loves you, and then in one fell swoop she's off making life plans with someone else. 177 pages worth of life plans. So this is... It just astounds me, the greed. And look, a lot of pundits have been very strong on this over a number of days, but the greed at this particular moment, when clubs are having to furlough staff last year and during a pandemic, is just extraordinary.
This thing is still alive, by the way. It's still waddling along in a zombified version of itself. Its arms have been chopped off, its legs have been chopped off, its head has been chopped off, but its torso is still waddling along towards us, this European Super League. So it has vowed to reshape the project. That's the latest we've got from the European Super League overnight. They said in a statement, despite the announced departure of the English clubs forced to take such decisions due to the pressure on them, we are convinced our proposal is fully aligned with the European law and regulations. We shall reconsider the most appropriate steps to reshape the project, always having in mind our goals of offering fans the best experience possible while enhancing solidarity payments for the entire football community. So it hasn't gone away, the European Super League. The Italian clubs, both Milan clubs I should say, are considering jumping ship. They look likely to be the first 2 rats to swim off the ship this morning. The third remaining rat, Juventus, is a larger, more boisterous rat, and maybe has less of a sense of what everybody else thinks about its own rodent abilities. Juventus won't be jumping ship for a while, neither will Real Madrid. You would presume that they will be the last 2 to swim away from this thing, Perez and Agnelli. That leaves Barcelona and Atletico Madrid after the two Milan clubs jump later on this morning as the remainder of the 4 teams left in the European Super League. But that 4 will probably become 2 eventually when it comes to confirmed teams left in this thing. When it comes to those that have actually left, there's been a lot of grovelling. Arsenal released a statement last night, and I'm actually quite surprised with how clear they were in their apology. They said, as a result of listening to you and the wider football community over recent days, where you're withdrawing from the proposed Super League, we made a mistake and we apologise for it. The decision to be part of the Super League was driven by our desire to protect Arsenal, the club you love, and to support the game you love through greater solidarity and financial stability. They said a system needs to be fixed. We need to work together to find solutions which protect the future of the game and harness the extraordinary power football has to get us on the edge of our seats. Our aim is always to make the right decisions for this great football club, to protect it for the future and take us forward. We didn't make the right decision here, which we fully accept. Now, getting a club to have just apologised to sign up to any remodeled Super League is going to be a difficult task. That will give a lot of people hope this morning that clubs are actually coming out to apologise, because you can't apologise and then say, yeah, you know what, this has been modified, we're up for this thing once again. Daniel Levy apologised as well. He said, we regret the anxiety and upset caused by the ESL proposal. You mentioned Alexander Seferin, Shane. He has had a field day. He is smug as hell over the last 12 hours. When Manchester City were the second club to leave the ESL last night, he said, I'm delighted to welcome City back to the European football family. It takes courage to admit a mistake, but I never doubted they had the ability and common sense to make that decision. City are a real asset to the game. So Seferin is loving all this. This is the same man who called all these people snakes and liars. But maybe now that Woodward is gone, and maybe if you sort out Agnelli and he never shows his face in public again, Seferin can forget about all of this. In another statement, he said, it is admirable to admit a mistake, and these big clubs made a big mistake, but they are back in the fold now, and I know they have a lot to offer, not just to our competitions, but to the whole of the European game. The important thing now is that we move on, we build the unity that the game enjoyed before this, and move forward together. If one man has won from this, Shane, it is Alexander Seferin.
He's come out of this smelling like roses. UEFA have come out of this smelling like roses, and the vitriol, the smugness, as you said last night, coming out of him. But why wouldn't he be smug? This is the gall of these guys to do this at this particular juncture in time. If this was a normal year, if there wasn't a pandemic, if there weren't people struggling with the world over, if there weren't, football clubs last year, as I said, having to furlough people, this would still be a disaster, a PR disaster, and a disgrace, to put it mildly. And even you mentioned a couple of the statements there, like Liverpool's one last night when it came through, and they said, quote, we've heard from the stakeholders. And as Graham Souness pointed out, what about the stakeholders that matter, the fans? They had absolutely no say in this. They just had to deal with the consequences, players as well, the innocent bystanders. But to say that, we listen to the stakeholders, they weren't talking about the fans there. And like you used the word sheepishly is mentioned or this morning on the back page of some of the papers. The way in which Arsenal, Spurs, United and Liverpool departed last night was sheepish, personified. It was just such a cowardly way for them to exit. And you look at clubs like Chelsea and Man City, who at least had the brains to leave a couple of hours earlier. And you might say, well, at least the other clubs followed. But Abramovich had the brains to get out of this thing before it became an absolute PR disaster. At least Chelsea and City can recover from this in some way. But how do United and Liverpool recover from this in particular? Spurs are obviously following along, and so are Arsenal. They're mid-table teams in the Premier League at the moment. They're just doing what they're told in some ways. But for Liverpool and United, and this has been discussed over the last 24 hours, last 12 hours, like how do Henry and Werner and the Glazers show their face at their respective stadiums again? I mean, Joe Glazer hasn't been at a Manchester United match in a couple of years. I think a Barcelona game in the Champions League a few years ago was his last time at Old Trafford. So he doesn't care about United anyway. He doesn't care about the fans. He doesn't care about the history of the club. And neither do Werner or Henry at Liverpool. They don't care about Bill Shankly's legacy and his grandson coming out yesterday saying his grandfather will be spinning in his grave at all of this. They just don't care. How can they show their faces ever again at these clubs? I would suspect they won't, Owen, to be fair.
Yeah, it's true, and we're going to be getting Daniel Harris's take on that a little bit later on as well. Maybe Ed Woodward is just a sacrificial lamb for all of this, Shane, and maybe that will be that as far as the Glazers are concerned. They are extremely stubborn men. They have the brassest neck you're ever likely to see. So if anybody's going to dig in and hold on to power over the next little while, when all the pressure will be against them, it will be the Glazer family. Right, it is 20 to 8 on this Wednesday morning, OTB AM, live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead.